So today, in our deep dive on the afterlife, as we've been doing, I believe this must be class 9 or 10. I think class 9 of this deep dive.
10,
Class 10?
because I just watched 9, because I
Okay.
missed that one.
Class
Just
10.
so you know.
Class 10. It's our minion of classes on the deep dive. Okay. So today I want to talk about the body and the soul. And again, you're probably wondering why we're calling this the afterlife. Well, in order to understand the afterlife, we have to first understand life, who we are, and what's it all about. According to Kabbalah, what defines us is our soul. That's who we are. If you ask the person, who are you? Or you ask someone, who am I? I am my soul. My soul is enclosed in my body during my tenure in this world. But really, who I am is my soul. So we can't just say that we're just soul, because while we're in this world, we're body and soul. Part of who we are is a reflection and a result of the body that we possess. So on some level, we are who we are because, or maybe even despite, of the bodies we possess, depending on how you look at it. So take, for example, people who are vertically challenged. Some people who are vertically challenged tend to be more introverted or timid because of their physical contour. And some people who are vertically challenged act on quite the opposite end. They exhibit characteristics that are referred to actually as a Napoleon complex. They're aggressive, they're loud, they're domineering. Mentally speaking, the shaping of our internal personality may be forged by physical appearance, heavy, thin, tall, short, black, white. How we perceive ourselves affects the way we project ourselves, for better or for worse. Today we call it privilege, right? Some people have privilege because of a certain characteristic, a physical characteristic, while other people, for whatever reason, it could be historical, it could be, there's so many elements, and I'm not the right person to get into all of those elements, but for whatever reason, there are people who feel that they don't have the same privilege as others. And obviously it's not my place or anyone's place to say who and what privilege somebody has. But if somebody feels that way, it is a physical characteristic of the reality of their body. If we're talking about body and soul, it's not a spiritual characteristic. It's not a soul characteristic. It's a physical characteristic. How they look, or essentially how they perceive themselves. So in all honesty, whether our personality is a result of our physical appearance, meaning that a facelift will actually make us feel different, or if alternatively, our physical presentation is a manifestation of our personality or our soul, it ultimately depends on us. It depends on me and you. It depends on how we look at ourselves, which means there are people, I'll give you my own lack of privilege, or whatever you want to call it. It happens to be that as a result of male pattern baldness, that I lost some hair on my head. Now, there are some people in my situation who would feel a sense of loss, a sense of it would be demeaning they would feel like they lack the privilege that somebody who had a full head of hair. At the same time, I think that, and as I once heard someone put it, this could be the missing tile syndrome. Meaning when you walk into a room that's full of ceiling tiles, you don't see all the ceiling tiles, you just see the one that's missing. And so each one of us has a missing tile, and we can choose to focus on the missing tile, or we can focus on all the other tiles on the ceiling that are there. And it's our choice. Somehow, society has conditioned us to focus on the missing tile, on what we don't have, instead of what we do have. And again, maybe it's easy, maybe it's because I have privilege in so many other ways that this doesn't bother me, or maybe it's because of my education or the way I was raised. I'm not sure. But the fact of the matter is that I definitely can see how someone can choose to be a victim, or someone can choose the missing tile, while other people can choose to see all of the other great things they have in their life. And I think that it reflects whether we choose to live life from the inside out or from the outside in. Do we choose to live life from the inside out or the outside in? Think about it for a moment. People who choose to live life from the inside out, they're going to project their physical form as an accurate representation of their spiritual state. Their body will reflect their soul. And by its very nature, the body is a physical representation of the inner pattern of the soul that animates it. So the question is whether we live in alignment with that level of our soul or not. When we do live from the inside out, and we're able to cultivate a healthy internal outlook, the result will, in fact, be apparent in our physical posture. People will see us differently. They're going to see us as more confident. They're going to see us as healthier, as better human beings, only because we're living our lives from the inside out. All in all, what I want to say is that the body is not a prison for the soul. The soul is so much greater than the body. And your body is not a prison for your soul. So many people, because I don't want to judge, but for whatever reason, so many people end up looking at their lives as a body being a prison for the soul. The body, by its nature, is not an alien abode meant to oppress or meant to stifle the spirit. Rather, as the Holy Zohar puts it, the bodies of the upright are holy. The body is like the parchment on which the Torah scroll is written. The Torah couldn't exist without the parchment that it's written. So the body is like the parchment of the Torah. God's infinite presence can be found everywhere, from the great to the most mundane, from the spiritual to the physical. And even there's God in the coarse matter as a corporeal existence. The body is, at least in its natural and original form, a physical expression of the spirit that animates it and gives it life. That's what the body is. It's a physical expression of the spirit that animates it and gives it life. You know how we know that? Because at the end of life, it's so hard for the two to be able to separate. because they've spent so much time together. When that is the difficulty of the end of life, is that separation of soul and body. That the body and soul can and should be, and for most of us do become the best of friends. And when the body and the soul work together, when they are both engaged in positive acts, when they're both engaged in positive thoughts, then the body can be a vehicle through which we can experience freedom. Now, I'm using that word, I would say, liberally. When the opposite occurs, the body becomes a prison. The body becomes an oppressive place instead of one that's free. I think about Josephus. You may have heard of Josephus before. Josephus lived in the times of the Romans, and he was a Jew who was very secular. He was secular in those times means very different than secular today. And he was the official person who wrote down for the Roman general Vespasian. He wrote down his whatever was going on. So he was the historian, and he wrote this book. It's available today in many languages. It's available in English as well. He called it the Jewish War. And in this book, he doesn't recount many personal anecdotes. He was, just to give you an idea of who he actually was, he was the commander of the Jewish forces in the Galilee before becoming the historian that we know him to be. And he tells this story that he was once, his forces were battling the Roman general Vespasian. This is before he became the historian. Vespasian was later actually going to become the emperor. And his battalion was being overrun. So he retreated with his remaining men to a cave. He realized their predicament, and they urged him to commit suicide. To them, it was better to die by their own hands than to be captured by the enemy. Josephus says, I thought about it, and I decided that I was not very fond of this idea. And so I told my fellow comrades, why are we so anxious to commit suicide? Why should we make those best of friends, the body and the soul, part company? Now, although there's a measure of controversy regarding the integrity and the reliability of Josephus for a lot of reasons, I won't get into it now. Maybe in our class on Jewish history, we'll talk about Josephus. But I think there's a lot of wisdom in this moment, and in other parts of his book as well. He has there's always, whether you agree with a book or whether you think it's valid, there's always wisdom that can be found everywhere. And I think that's a beautiful way of living in general, is just being able to find wisdom in every situation, everywhere, wherever you are. So even if it's not something you agree with, and today our world has become so polarized. Oh, you either think this or that, and it's become so political. And I think that as human beings, we have a choice to look at the polarized world and say, if it came from this and this person, if it came from this and this place, because I don't respect you or I don't want to know of your political leanings, I can't listen to anything you say. I like to say that there's wisdom in everything. And even if I don't agree with you, and even if I think that, I think Josephus, for those of you who know, is a great example of that, where so many people did not agree with what he did in his life. But there's always going to be truth that can be found even with those we don't agree with. And just to throw the baby out with the bathwater today, I'm not sure, this is just my opinion, but I'm not sure that we we experienced that, or we were able to deal with that properly. And the reason why I'm saying that is because the fact that you chose to be here, or you chose to be there, or or you heard that, you didn't have to turn on that particular show or or the news that day. You didn't have to listen to that particular person. You didn't have to go out to lunch with that friend who you may or may not agree with. But the fact that you chose to be there, whether it was a conscious choice or it was a passive choice, there's a reason why you had to hear that. There's a reason why you had to be there. So just to throw it all out and say, I don't agree with it because I don't agree with it politically, we're missing the nuggets, the pearls of wisdom, the gold that is there for us. And there's always something. So for me, again, Josephus is probably in Jewish history the most debated historian. There are some people who won't even pick up his book. I'm proud to have 4 different translations of his book in English. Why? Because there's always going to be wisdom that can be found there, whether or not you agree with him. And his book is also happens to be well over 2,000 years old. And there's value in that also. Like I've said before, and I've said this in Talmud class, how many books do we have of history or of wisdom that are of that age? And so I think with his conversation to his comrades, when he says, why should we make those best of friends, the body and the soul, part company? I think there's more than a kernel of truth in his argument. Body and soul can become the best of friends. All we have to do is acknowledge their interdependent relationship. To exist as a fully functioning human being is to be joined as one, and to include both your body and your soul. There's no body without the soul, and that's it. Every single body will have a soul animating it. If the soul's not animating it, then we know what the body is. When the soul departs the body, that is the moment that the soul is no longer animating the body. And there's no soul without a body. Without a body, the soul is just pure spirit. It's not human. It's not soul anymore. In order for it to be soul, it needs to have a body, contrary to that popular Disney film. Body and soul, according to the Talmud, are likened to a blind and a lame person combining as one entity, where the lame can see now and the blind can walk. One sees, but the lack of legs and arms to reach whatever it desires. And the other can move and act, but there's no inkling of when and where to go. The soul empowers us to see, but it's the body that actually gets us there. The body moves about, but it's this in the indwelling spirit that directs that movement. So yes, it's true the body is actually making the movement, but the body makes no movement without that spirit. And together in harmony, they can join and they can become the best of friends. And as all good friendships demand, each partner requires to equally contribute to the relationship. And as it's in every other area of life, for the proper outcome to occur, there needs to be this correct internal balance. As much as the body needs to be appreciated for its value, it cannot become an object of obsession or an object of worship, which so often it becomes today. Indulgence, involvement, yes, but not overindulgence, not an inordinate preoccupation. It cannot become the obsession. I'll stop here. I know that so many of you have questions. So I'm just going to take the questions first from the chat that people put in, and then I'll take your questions. I'll ask you to unmute. So Cheryl, I see you. And okay. The first question is, it must be a special and possibly a completion of the Sephirot in some way. Okay, thank you for that statement.
That was just the lesson. Sorry, I
Yes.
didn't mean to confuse
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah, it's great. Thank you. Can the animal soul make the body a prison in some circumstances? Yes, that's the animal soul is the soul that connects the body and the spirit. So the animal soul could, and it's simply by indulging in it. It's simply by just choosing to focus on the instinct, the animal soul desires more than the more meaningful, purposeful desires. The question is the connection between the soul, ailing, and illness? I don't understand that question. I think I understand it. I just want to make sure I get it right.
Sorry, yeah, I sometimes I type faster than my brain can process what I want to say. Is there a connection between a soul that is ill and an ill body? Meaning, could our soul be responsible for some of our physical illnesses?
I can only tell you what I know. The Maimonides wrote, his first book that he wrote actually was 8 chapters, and it was a introduction to the ethics of our fathers of the Mishnah Avot. And the beginning of the 3rd chapter, he starts off the chapter by saying, just like there are diseases and illnesses in the body and remedies in the body, there are also diseases and remedies for the soul. And every single disease in the body comes from a disease in the soul. That's Maimonides. You can accept that or you can leave that. So that's the only source I've ever seen for something like that. And obviously he was a philosopher, a Kabbalist, and a doctor. So it's interesting that he had that direct connection between body and soul with regards to illness. But I haven't seen it anywhere else. But he's also, it's rare that people talk about medical condition that way.
Did he give us a map? You know, in reflexology, we have a map that we know that each.
He did. Later on, he wrote some very specific elements. Yes. Yeah. I'll give you an example because the Rebbe spoke about this, and the Rebbe spoke about cancer this way. The Rebbe quoted Maimonides. I'm deviating here, but the Rebbe quoted Maimonides and then continued to say that generally, if there's an illness in the body, then what do? You go to a doctor, and a doctor prescribes something that will fix and fill that which is missing. But what happens with tumors is that there's something added to the body. And so it's a different type of illness. It's an illness that we never heard about before and no one should ever know of. But it's an illness that not where there's something missing in the body, but rather where there's something added to the body. So obviously, if you want to have the same remedy, that wouldn't work. And so the Rebbe says that this also has a very different spiritual source. What is the spiritual source for it? Now, I want to just make sure that you understand. When we talk about illness, we're not talking about a specific person getting a specific illness. We're talking about the portal that allowed this illness to come into the world. There's a spiritual portal that allowed a particular illness to come into the world, which means you should not talk about it in an individual way. Somebody should not think what I'm about to say, which the Rebbe says is the source for the tumor spiritually, doesn't mean that particular person has that source. It means that that particular spiritual illness brought that physical illness into the world. So the Rebbe says that generally there people were haughty. They were egotistical, but they were never egotistical without a reason. They had a reason to be haughty. What happened is, in recent generations, there's a new type of illness, a more emotional or spiritual illness. And that illness is very different, where people are egotistical without a reason. They didn't do anything to have that ego. It just exists. And with that came into the world a particular illness that takes over the body as if it's the only thing that exists. It's a growth. It's like an ego growth that takes over the body and takes all of the antibodies and focuses it on itself. And we know that is the physical manifestation of a tumor. And so then the Rebbe says that you should know that before an illness comes into the world, the remedy for that illness comes into the world. And so while they're still searching for a proper remedy for cancer, for tumors, the Rebbe said there is the anecdote, the spiritual anecdote to that physical or that spiritual remedy is that if there is haughtiness without a reason, there should be humility without a reason. And how do you get humility without a reason? By studying Kabbalah. And he said that's why today it's become so much more popular than it was maybe 1,000 years ago, because they didn't need it the way we need it today. Today, with the spiritual disease of haughtiness and egotism without a reason, we need something to combat that. And that is this study that we're doing. It combats that spiritual disease, and that's the remedy that we can have for it spiritually. Just took a long talk of his and tried to encapsulate it in 2 minutes. I hope you got that. But thank you for bringing that up. Let me go to the next question here. Could you elaborate on the differences between soul and spirit? Yes, soul is the spirit while it's enclosed in the body. So the soul is only in relation to the body, which means while the spirit is animating the body, it's called the soul. But the moment it's not animating the body anymore, it's spirit. Somebody messaged privately, if doctors would prescribe exercise versus Prozac, people would have less mental health issues. I agree. And mental health is such a big part of our lives, especially post-COVID. There's a lot of mental health issues, and we're very cognizant of that. And I think that just this is very healing for we all suffer from mental health issues today as a result of 2 years of isolation. It's just normal, even the rest of us. And sometimes, look, there's definitely a value in an antidepressant. Sometimes some people need that. I hope it's not forever, but they do need that. And there are some people who obviously can't regulate it at all. So they would need that for a longer period of time. And they would need to make sure that, and it helps them become functional human beings in society. But generally, for the average person, definitely, it's something that we should think about. And I agree with you that isolation and media have caused mental health issues. So the opposite of that is to get out. Thank God in the world, we have great sunshine today. Get out, see the world, experience it, smell the flowers, be grateful, and of course, spend time with us or with anyone. Spend time with people as we are spending time today. Okay, those are all the comments. So Cheryl.
Expect me to remember that after 20 minutes of diversion?
Sorry.
No, actually, I do remember. I actually had two things. And one had to do with class long ago, talking about the spirit or the soul leaving the body at the time of death. This is in our old classes on Monday night. And we had a short discussion, and you really emphasized something to me that I wanted to know a little bit more about. You said cremation was the absolute worst way for a person to, I don't know if it was leave this world, whatever, because I mentioned that I had a friend who had that in her will. So now this friend's sister is literally on her deathbed. It will be a matter of days. And I know she's doing the same thing. She's asked for cremation. And my friend of 50 plus years said, what do I do? She can't answer me. She can't open her eyes. She's not responding with eye blinks or whatever. And I said, of course it's a metaphorical because of your class. I said, you need to pray for her soul. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, to pray for her soul, that it doesn't suffer as it leaves her body. I couldn't get into the, I mean, obviously, there's been weeks and weeks worth of information that you've given us. I would like to know how to comfort her when she has a sister who is going to die any day. I could be there with her, but could you revisit that cremation thing and why and how that's bad for the soul?
Well,
is that a thing?
I'll add something to that cremation thing. Instead of
Okay.
revisiting it, I'll add to it.
Okay.
If the soul and the body are best friends,
Right.
why do you want to destroy a friend that's so close?
Well, if they're already separated.
They're not
Let's just-
separated. Friends, do friends ever separate? Do friends ever truly separate in this world or the next? That's the hard thing. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, somebody would say to that, well, you can pull the Band-Aid off quickly or you can pull it off slowly. But I think that by saying that, you're not acknowledging the emotion. You're not acknowledging the person. There's a real pain there. And so the body and the soul, they become connected. They become one throughout our lifetime. Who wants to acknowledge that pain? And I didn't revisit the cremation conversation because that was a very important conversation. And I'm happy that we recorded that, so you can go back and you can
Okay.
listen. But I want to add to that cremation conversation that, I mean, again, for the Jewish community, we also have a collective emotion, being that was the choice of Hitler. May his name be erased. To so it becomes like, and I think he purposely chose that because he knew how anti-Jewish values it was. Like he could have done anything, but he purposely did that because it was so against Jewish value. To the earth you come, and to the earth you shall return. There's a tremendous value in us being able to. I know there's so much science today about how it's not good. I don't know. I can't tell you the science, but I can tell you within Judaism and within our belief, we the holiest things, if it's holy, we bury it. If it's a Torah, if it's a religious object that we no longer need or it's no longer able to be used, we bury it. And the same way a religious object is holy and it's buried, the same way the soul and the body especially, through our lifetime, we make it holy. And so therefore it needs to be buried. It becomes a religious object. It needs to be buried.
But if it's cremated, why couldn't you bury the ashes? It's still the body.
Look, you're asking me a question, post or pre? Post, once, we can't make choices for people, they make their own choices. So afterwards, we do the best we can. But if we have an opportunity, to encourage someone to bury instead of to cremate, sometimes it's a financial decision, which is terrible. And it should never be a financial decision. And like here in the community, if it's a financial decision, we make sure that we have a fund here to take care of people who can't financially bury their loved ones. And I hope every community has that fund. I don't know about other communities, but I know that we have one. And so, but what I can say is that it's such a huge value. Understanding, since we spend so much time here understanding the relationship between the body and the soul, I think it's such an important thought process, is that they are one. They're really one. And the soul cries. And that's what the Kaddish does. It eases that pain of the separation. Now, how to comfort someone? best way to comfort is empathy. And if you can't empathize, just be quiet. Just silence, just presence. But true presence is the best thing. I think the worst way to comfort someone is sympathy. If you can't relate to it and you can't be there for that person in a way that you're one with them, that your soul and their soul are connected, then just be silent, because the souls can connect without you saying anything. Presence and silence is sometimes the best. You don't have to say something. I know we feel like we have to fill the air, but we don't always have to fill the air. Silence is also good.
I am going to do that. Thank you. And just one more thing. I was wondering, at the end of this class, could we say some sort of Kaddish or prayers for those that were killed a couple of days ago, those innocent children in Texas and
Absolutely.
the teachers? Our hearts are breaking here. I don't know how it affected you in Canada, but it's really horrible, horrible.
Again, and thank you for bringing it up. If you hear about it, then part of being an empathetic person is any person with a soul and with a heart is going to be sad and crying. We heard about it. Look, it could have been so easy that we didn't know about it, but we do know about it. So the fact that we know about it, it means that we have something to do about it. This morning, I was driving my kids to school and an ambulance passed us. And we now say it's like a thing that we say whenever an ambulance passes us when we're driving. I hope everyone is okay, and may we pray that they should all be okay. And I started doing that with my kids because I find that we are exposed to so many situations, and we become shells of human beings emotionally because we don't empathize. And sometimes we don't know. The person who was hurt didn't hear me and didn't hear anything that we said, but it's us. We need to be sensitive to the world around us. It's such an important part of living in this world. It's not only about smelling the flowers, it's also about there was an ambulance that was on its way to save a life, and we need to be acknowledged. We need to acknowledge that. So the fact that we know about this horrific act in Texas, it's terrible. And it used to be, actually, for a long time, I was very against posting negative things on my social media. But recently I started, and I did post something on my social media with regards to what happened in Texas, because I find that it's us acknowledging the fact that we know about it. It's us acknowledging and empathizing as best we can. Sometimes silence is good too. So I think the best thing that we can do is, instead of saying a prayer, I think for a few seconds now, we can have a moment of silence here for them, and we can whisper our own prayer in our own heart and empathize with all the families of all these children who now have to deal with grieving a child what a parent should never know about, and empathize with all of the people around who have to deal with that. And Hashem should bless us that we should never know of such pain. We'll just take a few moments to remember them. Amen. All of your blessings and prayers should come true. Again, that idea of a moment of silence, I cannot stress it enough. Sometimes it's not necessarily a prayer. It's just a moment of silence, acknowledging a higher power, acknowledging we don't know, acknowledging that we are bodies and souls and bodies that are limited to time and space. And I'll also make a mention, Cheryl, that you said, let's do it at the end of the class. Whenever you bring it up, that's when we acknowledge. That's why I did it now in the middle of the class, because that's a moment, and that's your moment, and we shared all that moment together. But it's important not to wait, to allow that moment to manifest. Thank you. I'm gonna see. I'm gonna just finish this thought for today about body and soul, and then we'll go to your takeaways and your reflections, just your nuggets. I'll tell you a story. Somebody once came to the home of Rabbi Dov Ber. He was known as the Maggid of Mezrich. He came to pay him a visit. To say the least, the Maggid's home was far from impeccably furnished. He was not a wealthy man. Maybe there was a wobbly three-legged chair. That was all that the Maggid had to offer this visitor. And after some time spent discussing the issues at hand, the guest measured up the courage and asked the Maggid, why did he choose to live this way? The Maggid did what every good Jew would do, is answer a question with a question. And where is your beautiful furniture, he asked. Well, I'm on the road. And being on the road, you travel lightly. But at home is a different story. At home, I have a beautiful home. The Maggid smiles and he says, you speak words of truth. We are all now on the road. And on the road, we travel with only what is most valuable and important. On the road, all the other things of life are reduced to being insignificant and immaterial. I think when it comes to the body and the soul, we have to remember who we are and where we are. And genuine integration and wholeness is achieved when we come to view both the body and the soul in light of their perspective and their respective purposes. Spiritual equilibrium is attained when there's a harmony, when there's a symmetry between the body and the soul, between various aspects of our personality, various aspects of our being. And this occurs when the physical body self-expresses the spiritual soul, the spiritual self. When the body is not seen as a hindrance or a shackle binding the spirit, but rather the body is seen as a vehicle for the most powerful forms of soul expression. The self, who we are, is a beautiful synthesis of body and soul, a beautiful synthesis of ego and transcendence, finite matter and infinite spirit. And a fully realized selfhood can only be complete when we are fully aligned and able to create a perfect harmony between all aspects of our being. When we're fully present in our I-ness, and we are able to live present on all levels of existence. And when we achieve this, the perfect self is expressed, and we fully become aware of how finite we are, how finite our life is. And the only way to be able to find that peace is to know that there's a part of us that's infinite. There's a part of us that's connected. And even though our bodies are finite, our souls, and this experience that we're having right now of all of our souls connected, that experience will last for all time. Because our souls being connected here at this moment, they will last and this moment will last. And so that relationship, that synthesis between body and soul is what we can uniquely experience in this world. And we can't experience it anywhere else, because in every other world, we're going to be just the spirit. So the fact that we're here and we can experience this fusion of body and soul together makes this world unique, makes this experience unique, and also allows us to be able to think and to be able to connect consciously with the choice of just focusing on the body and making the body the main part of who we are, or to focus on the body and the soul connection and see how that works. And that ability to think of purpose, to think of meaning, to think of things that are outside of us, that are greater than us. That's the body-soul connection, where the soul can direct the body. The soul, not having the ability to move, can direct the body that has the ability to move. I'd love to hear your takeaways today. I think we'll start with Susie, because you're just the first one that comes up on my screen, and then you can pass it on to someone else.
Okay. So everything that you talked about marrying the body and soul speaks to me. And I heard something once, not that long ago, about how when we're not in touch with our soul, we're just flailing. And we don't understand our behavior, and we don't understand the behavior of others. But as soon as we start learning about our soul, and this Kabbalah class is amazing, and I'm so regretful that I was absent from it for so long, but I did feel like I was flailing. And now I come back to it, and it gives me calmness. And yeah, so that was my takeaway today. Yeah. Okay, Alexandria. Oh, she's gone. Oh, okay, there, you're back. We can't hear you.
I'm here. Thank you.
Okay.
I also just struggle finding my my icon so I can come back and go. And thank you, Susie. And we have missed you. I'm glad we met the other day, and
Yes.
after the Bat Mitzvah class, and
Yes.
and
You reminded me to come back.
the wonderful thing. So today I was in the car with Naomi right before joining the class, and we were speaking to my mom, and my mom asked her a question about her science project, actually exam today, and she started crying because my mom made her feel that she wasn't ready. And so we got to school, and she looked at me and she said, "Mom, do I look like I cried?" And I told her, just put a smile on your face. When you have a smile on your face, nobody will ever see that you've been crying. And to me, while I don't believe I've met my soul yet, I think there's a lot of work to do still before I get to meet that entity. But I do feel that when I bring out the smile, it's a window on my soul, and all of us, sometimes, some people are prettier than others. Rabbi, you were talking about our physical appearances and how we perceive ourselves based on what we have, we don't have. It's not about being prettier. Everybody's pretty, but some people don't perceive themselves as pretty as they should. I prefer that way of saying it. And I think that when we all put a smile on our faces, we're all beautiful, and it's a reflection of our soul reminding us that I'm here. You're not just a buddy. I'm here. So that's my takeaway for today. And I will pass it on to Jill.
Thank you, Alexandra. Before I say what I got, Rabbi, when you refer to the soul, are you referring to the godly soul and the animal soul, like the whole shebang? Or, I've just got a little bit confused there.
I'm happy that you brought that up, because some other people brought it up and I forgot to mention it. The godly soul is the peace of God within us. So that is the pure soul.
Yes.
The animal soul is has a soul. It's an animating soul, but it's very physical. It's very connected. So when I'm speaking about the soul, I'm speaking about the godly soul.
Okay, then I'm sorry, I have a question before. You said the body and soul work best when engaged in positive acts or thoughts. Isn't the soul then always engaged in positive acts?
Yeah, but not together.
Right, not together. Okay.
Yes.
So what I took away from today was really what early on when you were like the missing tile syndrome. Oh my gosh, that's just so perfect because you know, how much do I focus on like, oh, can't do that, shouldn't do that, whatever this thing. So it's where we put our focus, where we put our thoughts, and that kind of leads the way. So that's what I'm taking from today. I will pass it to Silent Kelsey.
Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I can't believe you called me that. My English teacher used to call me Quiet Kelsey because there was another Kelsey in class that was really loud. So, sorry, that was a throwback. Honestly, today, the live from the inside out. Like if I could just tell people one thing, I think that would be it. That was so simple, but it's really profound. And then just sitting in gratitude with everyone. And I'm just really so grateful for this group and that we can come together and talk about these things that happen in the world together and really process it together. So thank you. I will pass it to Cheryl.
Thank you, Kelsey. I would probably echo what you say, almost to a T, from the inside out. I think that's so important because I feel like there's so much more inside that I'm not processing on the outside to others that I want to. And I'm just getting that connection of this soul moving the body to do what it wants to do in sync. And I'm just, it's not quite together yet, but I'm getting there. And I agree with you again with gratitude with all of us together. And I liked what you, Rabbi, said, the uniqueness of us being in this moment together. And it goes back to the recording that I listened to about last week that's making an imprint. This is another imprint for all of our souls to be together at this moment in no other time, and to be able to pray silently for the victims and families that were riddled this week. So thank you for all of that. Ilana?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm grateful to be together. I don't really have much to add, but I never heard the distinction before. This was new to me between the soul and the spirit. So I always just thought of it as one and the same. So in a way, I'm kind of looking forward to the next talk about the spirit and what happens after the soul leaves the body. But I really appreciate the whole kind of idea of being in sync, which is very hard to do, but these classes really give me an opportunity to think about all these things. So thank you to everybody.
We have
So to Julian, who's quiet there, hiding.
Thank you. So I've been still thinking about the chat. So I'm very grateful for you answering someone else's question about the animal and the divine soul. So that's less thoughts for me to juggle. So the next one is the term spirit being used to describe God, Ruach Hashem, the spirit of God breathed into Adam. And I've also heard of the word spirits being used. I don't know if it's the word ruach or not in this case, but sometimes used to describe or refer to demons. And then when you were talking about the souls, I didn't know if you wanted to answer that before I read out the next one. I could read them all out. When you were talking about the soul causing the body and needing the body, I thought that what you were saying is like the flesh growing on a skeleton, like that the body is to the soul. So it's that they're both outgrowths, and they both provide, that is the body and the flesh on a skeleton, both provide expression to what's inside them, and both are defined physically by the structure and form of the inner item, whether it's the skeleton or the soul inside. At least in so much as a soul has a structure and form, not something I really know, but my guess is that it's like one of those famous nested Russian dolls, where each doll is nested inside each other. So like 5 levels of soul layers, but with decreasing appearance of form, the higher the soul or the more innermost the layer, until one gets to the innermost layer, the 6th within the 5, which appears empty or invisible, and could be God, and could be represented as the empty innermost chamber of the Russian dolls in this metaphor. So I don't know what you make of all that, but that's what's been on my mind all the time.
I think it's a great thought, and just to, you know, that metaphor of the matryoshka, of the Russian dolls, I think is a great metaphor to describe the layers of the soul. And it's true that I was simplifying it today a bit with the idea of spirit versus soul, but there's really 5 levels. And we've discussed it before, and I'm happy to discuss it in the future, but just to differentiate that. So thank you, Julian.
You're welcome. Would you say it was also accurate or true, the idea that the flesh on a skeleton parallels is a metaphor for the body on the soul?
I've never heard that, but it's a fascinating metaphor. I have to think about it. I've never heard it said that way.
I only thought of it after what you said. It gave me the idea that it's expressing and defining at the same time what's inside. And I don't know if you had any thoughts about that when you said that the spirit refers to the soul, but only when it's within the body, but yet we do refer to the spirit of God referring into Adam.
Yeah, so it's a matter of semantics when it comes. So that's why I like the fact that you mentioned the 5 levels, because then it takes the semantics and makes it more practical. But yes, it's a little matter of semantics, and the idea of spirit, like there's the idea of Ruach Elokim, is different than perhaps the spirit that we're referring to with regards to the soul. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And it's intentionally, would it be different again when people use the word spirits?
Yes.
To refer to
unfortunately, and I always say this, that the English language just fails when it comes to these kind of spiritual ideas. I mean, just the thought that you can love ice cream and you can love your grandmother and it's the same word, I mean, just shows you how failing the English language is when it comes to more, more deeper emotional or deeper spiritual ideas. So it's just really a matter of us using the English language, and it's just the semantics when it comes to this point, when it comes to it.
Thank you for answering all that.
Yeah, and thank you.
I think the next person is Shanna. Am I correct?
Hi, I've been absent for a while, and today I was glad that I was able to reorganize and make this morning possible. Next week as well, and every week after. I'm just blown away by the depth of the class and the discussion. And I guess my takeaway, there were so many, I took so many notes, but I'd like to hear this again. So I hope it is being recorded. I hope I can listen to it again and share it with others who aren't here. And I like the statement from the Magid of Mesrich that we're all on the road. Thank you.
And I think our last person is Celeste, who's been very quiet today. And we're thinking of you, Celeste.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Rabbi. I really appreciated the morning prayer that you led us in of gratefulness to be here and be together. I too found the living from the inside out to be a simple way to put a very powerful way to put a very powerful place to put our intentions. And then what I found most amazing today was what happens when we direct the consciousness of our group, of our souls together in silence. It really moved me. And thank you for making, for allowing that space and leading us through things like this. So thank you, Rabbi, and thanks everybody for sharing. What a great class.
What a great moment to be able to share. And we continue to think of all those who need speedy recoveries and all of those who are grieving, especially those in Texas who are grieving today. And we think of all of them, and our souls, being that we have souls, our souls can carry that with us all day. Our bodies will forget, but our souls won't. And that's the beautiful synthesis of the body can rely on the soul to remember. So thank you for being here today. And next week, same time, same channel. If any of you are going to be joining me later for meditation, you're welcome to join us at 7:30 for meditation tonight. And if any of you are joining us for Shabbat, we're looking forward to that as well. And to be continued, to be continued. And for those
Rabbi,
of you
make it interesting to 12 years old the Shabbat.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's hard to bring them.
we got it. We got the message loud and clear.
Thank
Yes.
you. Because when I announced the Friday night activity, I was like, oh.
Yeah, we
You
don't
know.
want that. We don't
No.
want that. Every
So-
experience, especially Jewishly, needs to be positive. So that's really, really important.
Thank you.
So with that, if anyone is joining us for Talmud now, we will move on to Talmud. Have a good day.
Good day.
If you are going.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.